Hey, what's up? It's Kit time for another video. Today, we will do a video on 20 plus tips on fast jigging. And I usually do this to cap off the series. Although I wouldn't say to end the series, but it's just a marker of sorts. Okay, so what's going to happen is that if there's something that's relevant and maybe there's a change and or something that's very relevant, we'll make a video and actually put it and add it to the 101 videos. But today, um, 20 tips to help you better understand things, or probably just some trivia or whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. If you're new to the channel, and if you learned something at the end of this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't, of course, if you're new, consider subscribing. Especially if you want to learn more about these things, there's a lot of videos in our kind of library. So go ahead and be, you know, uh, proactive and actually check the videos out. Okay. Okay. So let's start. Um, Weight. Okay, a light combo, a light rod and reel will make you last longer. Because guess what? This is a game of numbers, and you're gonna be dropping as much as you can, and you're dealing with something that's kind of heavy, and you're doing this repetitively. So if your rod and reel is kind of heavy, what's gonna happen is that you'll end up fighting your rod and reel as well. So it's gonna be very difficult, and it will cost you a lot of energy. So a light combo will make you last longer, and hopefully you'll last for the whole day. Especially when you're dropping at depth, what's gonna happen is you're gonna be fighting gravity as well, and that's before you even hook the fish. So a lot of guys that start out and they have really heavy combos because they don't know any better when they buy, right? That's when they suffer. Okay. Now, a shorter rod is easier to use. So you'll find rods that are like 5 foot plus 5'5", 5 foot, stuff like that. They're actually easier to use. So when you're starting out, that's something that you should actually consider. A shorter rod will be easier for you to use. Okay. Now, in contrast to that, a longer rod, okay, will give the jig better action. However, you really have to find the balance, because if you go to a longer rod, let's say there are spinning rods that are kind of longer than the conventional rods, and what happens if you go there, or immediately there, the fish will have more leverage on you, okay, because it's longer. So what's going to happen is, instead of you having the upper hand of the fish when it bites, um, it will have a longer leverage. Okay, and then bang, it will affect you, and it's going to be harder. If you're experienced, if you're more experienced, it's better. So before actually going to something that's 6 foot plus, let's say, uh shorter rods would actually give you a better experience, especially when you're starting out. Okay. So yeah, a good rod. Okay, a good rod. So let's say JDM rods. Okay, JDM rods will actually help you work the jig more, and that's pretty much why they're kind of expensive, because JDM rods help you with the action of the jig. Okay, so in the past, uh, the rods are kind of soft. Now they're a bit stiff, and they have recoil. So when you get into the rhythm, you know, when you're jigging like that, what happens is that the rod pulls on the jig, and then actually kind of it helps you, and again it will make you last longer. This is why some rods are actually expensive, because they help you. Okay, now faster reels. So there's always a subject of yeah, HG, XG, sorry, PG and HG. Now, if you know what you're doing, you will get a lot more strikes from fast faster moving fish like pelagics, you will actually catch more or get more strikes, not really catch more. And I've used them, PG, XG, MG, what else? HG. So the four I've used. And I can say, I've really, for pelagic fish, like take for example, tuna, okay? Because tuna like fast moving prey. Yellowtail, perhaps, uh, it would work, but it's harder to use. So again, if you don't know what you're using, and it also depends on the jig that you're using. So if you don't know what you're doing, stick with the PG, everything will eat it. Okay? If you know what you're doing, a faster reel, as you would all probably already know, will catch you some pelagic fish. Um, it is like riding a bike. So when you're going uphill, you can use what do you call this? A lower gear ratio, and then it'll be easier for you to climb. However, people that are into bikes and biking and stuff like that, there are specialists for uphill, uh, and guess what? They don't really use the same gears as a lot of people do. But guess what? They have a lot of practice, and it's the same for this. If you know what you're doing, HG, even XG will work. But man, it's going to be also difficult for them when they're fighting the fish. So experience is really something that matters when it comes to that. Um, Line and leader. A short, heavy leader will help you pull fish away from structure, and of course, short, stout leaders help you pull fish. There's very little to explain there. Here's something very interesting. Fluorocarbon will actually help your jig sink faster because guess what? When it drops down, the fluorocarbon has the same specific gravity as water. And what this means is that um, it sinks. Whereas with mono, what happens is that the mono will parachute and will have a lot more resistance going down. So always keep that in mind. When fishing shallow water for bigger fish, you need heavier line. Okay, and here's the thing: the bigger your target and the shallower the water, the heavier your line should be. This is because you don't have space to play the fish. And more than likely, what's going to happen is that these fish will actually grab the jig and head to structure immediately. And you need to stop those fish. Okay, so the shallower it is and the bigger your target is, the heavier your setup is. And for fast jigging, okay, it's actually kind of normal. Okay, so that's that. Now, if you're fishing deeper water, then it's a different story. JDM lines. Okay, JDM lines for jigging, they're actually color coded. And what happens is that what it is that you have one color per 10 meters. So it's a different color in 10-meter increments. The transition is usually marked with white. Okay, pay attention to this because when you're dropping and sometimes it's not really, you just kind of don't pay attention. The transitions actually really help a lot because it's really not 10 meters per se. So, the transitions are kind of like this in length. And they do that because you have to kind of see it while you're dropping. And sometimes the drop is actually quite fast. So if you pay attention to those, you can actually literally drop the line towards exactly where the fish are or just a bit over. And usually what I do is I pay attention to those transitions because it's a difference of about this much, right? So if I'm dropping, say, 10 meters under the fish, I could choose to stop in, what do you call this, the transition line. And I know that, okay, it might not be 10 meters, but I can actually start working the jig, what do you call this, first. So if there's 5 people there and we're all dropping to the same level, okay, if I stop at the transition line, when I see it, boom, it means that I'm reeling the jig up first. and more than likely I will actually catch before the others. Yeah, and that's very important because remember, when you're hooked up in on our boat, at least the guys that are on your side, they kind of have to give you space. Okay. 8x. Okay, I know that for slow jigging, I say that, hey, I use 4x because it doesn't stretch as much as 8x. Okay, and that's a fact. You just want to have the line that stretches the least so that you can have the most sensitivity. Now, for fast jigging, because you're reeling a lot, okay, you're actually reeling and not stopping, okay, there's a difference. So you're reeling slack and you're reeling stretch, and it's constantly in motion. Even if you're actually doing it slow, you're constantly in motion, okay, with very little stops in between. Now with slow jigs, of course, you're moving slower, you know, and it's very important that you have the pause. For slow jigging, for fast jigging, it's constant, okay. So 8x is perfectly fine because you're taking off the slack and the stretch each and every single time you're reeling. Now here's another thing that you should know actually. When you're reeling, this part here actually the stack grows, okay, and it goes back to the way it was. Well, what happens when you're reeling is that not only is the drag going back to your preset, okay, so in essence, your reel is stronger or strongest when you've dropped to the let's say 150 meters. You drop at 150 meters, your drag has changed. The drag kind of tightens, so it gives it more resistance. Now, as you're reeling, this stack of line actually grows, and what happens is that there's two things that happen. Okay, so your drag decreases and the speed of retrieve actually increases. So in essence, what's happening is that every time you put line while reeling, okay, the reel gets faster and faster and faster and faster because the rate of retrieve gets faster because of that line stack growing. Now what happens is that your jig is moving, okay, and then as it moves higher in the water column, it actually moves faster. So your jig is gradually moving faster and faster and faster. It doesn't have to be that way, which means that you can slow down your retrieve and still get the same motion that you've had when you've dropped. Okay, so bonus tip. Um, there are some jigs that you can rig upside down. Okay, so jigs such as this one right here, what happens is that if the I find that they're eating this, they're biting this well, and then it boom, the bite just shuts off. I will rig this upside down, meaning my line will be tied here, and it'll give me a different action, and it will trigger bites. Okay, jigging master long jigs are very good examples of this. And also, this particular jig I have here, the curve slider, it works really well with that kind of trip or trick. Okay. Cheap jigs bend. Check for straightness before you drop. Again, especially after catching a fish. Because guess what? See, this thing is bent. See that? So you can, I mean, this is a cheap jig. So, and I left it like this. Okay, so see, it's not straight. I left it like this from the last fishing trip, and you just have to kind of straighten it so that it'll have like the same action it has. Otherwise, um, it's gonna spin all over the place, and fish won't bite that. Now, if you're in a place where the fish bites spinning jigs and all that, hallelujah, good for you. But in most places around the world, a jig that doesn't swim right will not catch a fish. Just like a trolling lure that swims sideways. Maybe it'll catch a fish, but it's not really going to catch a lot. Okay, so uh, just remember that. Always keep a bottom balanced thin jig rig on a spinning combo. Now, there are times when you see your friends hooking up. Um, you're in the middle of doing something. Maybe you're eating a sandwich or whatever. Now, if you have a spinning rod rigged with something that drops really fast, a thin, fast jig, or a thin, heavy jig, something like this, what will happen is that there's not a lot of surface area to actually get affected, so it gets down really fast. And guess what? If you're able to do that, then you'll be able to join your friends in getting hooked up. If not, then well, you're gonna have to take your time and all that, or you could just go back to eating. Um, the Sea Falcon Cutlass is probably the easiest jig to use that's made today, and it's this one. So if you have the what do you call this, the resource to buy this, if you're in a country that actually has Sea Falcon, look for this jig. Very, very easy to use. We usually give this to guys who kind of join us for the first time, and it usually catches fish. And they've caught some fish that we were just like, whoa, it ate that. So this jig, okay, I would not leave the house without at least a couple of these. And actually, while I was opening boxes here earlier today, looking for assist cords and stuff, I found a few of the big ones that I have, and I was so happy because I was like, oh my god, I thought it'll take time for me to look for them, but this is very important. Okay, as far as color is concerned, it's up to you. You actually use the color that you like. I mean, I have this and I have this color, and a lot of people don't like this, mostly because they don't know when to use it, but killer. Okay, this color, killer. And this size too, this is a 200 or 150. Okay, so this is really, really good. It's worth the money, trust me on this. Okay, sliding jigs, there we go. Sliding jigs need to be worked slower so they slide, because if you're pumping it fast, they're not gonna slide. They're not working the way they should be working. Okay, so there's a lot of really good sliding jigs from a lot of Japanese brands. uh, Choose your poison. Okay, this slides too. Okay, so a sliding jig should be worked slower. If you're jigging them fast, they're just gonna zigzag, and it'll be no different than any other jig. So uh, a sliding jig is designed to slide, make it slide, and it works. Okay, so you don't have to jig them like you have epilepsy. That's reserved for a particular person named Wael. He's good at that epileptic jigging. Okay, connections. There are special swivels you can use instead of a solid ring, but they're actually kind of hard to find and expensive, and they have a lifespan. So if you after several what do you call this, uses, and here for us it's kind of accelerated because the Gulf is actually very, very salty. So we get salt intrusion in all our gear, especially on the swivels. We use them like 3-4 times, and they're kind of already uh, like they're not moving as free as possible. So these things are actually kind of disposable. Now, if you don't want or can't afford to actually spend for those things, stick with a solid ring. Figure eight rings or F8s. Okay. If you can get them cheap, go ahead. But in most instances, they're actually not cheap, and also kind of not easy to find. Now, um, these are kind of like the reasoning behind the F8s is to separate your uh, split ring and your knot. Okay, so if this is your knot and it holds the ring, the argument is that sometimes, you know, this gets hit. The instance of that happening is actually kind of rare for me, so I always found f8s to be kind of moot. They're also too big or not stealthy enough for slow jigging, but these things are actually made strong. So if at all, use them for strength. For me, I kind of just find them as a novelty. Uh, I would rather use oval rings. Okay, but if it makes you feel better, go right ahead. Chinese solid rings. Here we go. This is a place where you could save. Okay, Chinese solid rings are more than good enough, and that's no bull. Their split rings, however, are sketchy as fuck. But you could use them for slow or for fast jigging. Sorry. So let me go back. Chinese solid rings, good enough. Their split rings are sketchy, but for fast jigging, because you don't need a split ring that is load bearing. Remember, when you are fast jigging, okay, your connection to your jig is like that. Okay, that, and the split ring connects to your solid ring. Okay, now what happens there is that there's there's no attachment on the jig that's attached to the fish. Okay, so the fish, you grab it, it grabs the hook, and the jig is here and it's free swinging. There's no pressure on the jig. Slow jigging, different story. But for fast jigging, you can get away with non-load bearing split rings. Now, I suggest that you actually separate these batch of split rings so that you don't mix them with your good split rings, the load bearing ones. Okay, so you can save a lot of money, especially in the long run when you're using these sketchy split rings from China. Solid rings that you can go ahead and buy from China. I have never heard of a solid ring failing from China. Okay, so I use them too. I mean, it's a good way to save money. All right. There are swivels with solid rings for sale as well. Okay, and also kind of rare, um, and not easily available. They do the same thing with the swivel with the big eyes. That's the special swivels I was talking about earlier. But what's good with this is that you have your swivel and then it has the solid ring, and the solid ring is in contact with the swivel, not your nut. Okay, so there's actually a buffer. Now this is also good when you're fishing around uh, structure, and then there's fish with teeth, because the swivel actually kind of protects your knot. Okay, from experience, uh, I've actually used it, and there were several instances where it actually saved the jig. But remember that your assist hook is still attached via Kevlar or braid or whatever, and that can get cut. Okay, so there were several times where I got the jig back, I didn't get the hook. Okay, and then, but obviously when I put wire on, wire assist hooks on, I caught barracudas or kingfish, well, mostly barracuda, but you know, this is something that could save, all right, without you actually putting an obtrusive leader. So a swivel, which is like just that long, okay, and then they have the rings and all this. So yeah, kind of works. Same with the special swivel. Actually, it kind of acts the same way, but this one just has a ring, or sometimes even two rings. Okay. Grommets. A lot of people have been asking me about grommets and stuff. So, um, they're not made for jigging. Okay. There are just some enterprising people that probably thought that this was a good idea, but see, the thing is, you have to use a crimp when you use a grommet. Okay. So as far as attaching it with a uh, assist hook, don't go there. Bulky, very bulky, and you don't want that. So if you're not concerned with stealth, if you're connecting it to your line and everything, if you want to use a crimp, go right ahead. If it works for you, hey, you know how you eat your sandwich, none of my business. But the big thing for me when it comes to these things is to make it as streamlined as possible so that the movement is correct. Okay, and stealth could be one of the factors, especially when you're fishing in pressured water. But yeah, if it works for you, go right ahead. I just like things that are as simple as possible, because the less hardware you have, the less failure you encounter. And the more that I'm actually doing this, the more I discover that making things with the least number of knots, the least number of connections, it just kind of makes things as streamlined, and they just work better. All right, now that's your 20. Okay, let's move, and I have, I think, about five more assist hooks. Okay, so the hooks that point in are for slow jigging, and the hooks that point out are for fast jigging. We're talking about tandem hooks here. So um, you know when you're rigging, it's not to say that you won't catch if you interchange, because I've done it, and I've caught fish with it. It's just that um, the hooks that actually point out will give you a better hookup ratio than the hooks that point in. Okay, for fast jigging, it's just how the jig moves, and also the hooks that point out give you a better chance. um I don't like using double hooks, and single hooks, I believe, are just as good as double hooks. The problem there is that a lot of people don't size them correctly. Okay, so like take for example this one right here. I'm pretty sure that some people would rig this particular jig exactly like this, but as I will, I find these hooks actually kind of small. Okay, and remember, this is the jig that I used in the previous video, and I showed you the hooks and how I sized the single hooks on these, and guess what, they work fantastically. And I think, if at all, my catch rate actually increased, and verifiable over the years. And trust me, I've done like two hooks, three trebles, and whatever. Okay, I've tried a lot over the past 20 something years. And again, I go back to what I said earlier about keeping things simple. This is one of them. Single hooks are also safer to use, especially on fish like dorado that flail around. Like as soon as you gaff it, put it on the deck. Tuna are the same, they flop around and all that. Um, it's safer. You know that the hook is in the mouth, and there's no other hook. So uh, especially on our boat, uh, you know sometimes Faisal takes friends just so they could experience it. I mean, this kid loves sharing. Okay, and that's nothing bad. Obviously, we want the sport to grow, and I'm thankful that he's doing that, because guess what, that's how I taught him. So and it's and you know what, if you actually get to talk to these guys that actually go with us, like the first timers, uh, I'm at their side, and I'm teaching them, so one of the one of the things that you can control is that, okay, teaching them, rigging for them, and everything. What you can't control is that if there are two hooks there and they don't know how to react, you know you put the fish on the deck and it's flailing around, guess who's going to get hooked? More than likely it's going to be those guys, because they don't know how to manage or where they're supposed to stand and all this, right? So just as a safety precaution, for fast jigs, we rarely use two hooks. And guess what? The boys, pretty much all of them use singles. That's it. And they, I catch, they catch, everyone on the boat catches. and for fast jigs we only use one. So over the years, kind of gravitated towards there, and not just because of the hookup ratio, but also because of safety. Okay. Now here's something very important. Making your own assist hooks will catch you more fish. Period. Okay. So like take for example, this is ready-made assist hooks, and you can see that the length is just there. And although you'll find bite marks there as well, majority of the bite marks are here. And guess what? If it's not custom to this, what's going to happen is that uh, the uh, the hooks will either fall short, or they're either too big or too small. So it's very difficult to find the right length, the right sized hook, and this, etc., etc., etc. It just kind of um, it's a long list of things that are just not right. So no excuses. If you make your own assist hooks, you can customize per jig, and of course it will help you catch even more. Okay. Uh, Now here's a fun fact. Treble assist hooks exist. Okay. And they do work well for some fish. Now years ago, this was in the early days of jigging, Mustad actually made this one particular assist hook that they marketed, and they actually marketed it for toothy fish because of how they they strike. Now, obviously, I was making assist hooks at that time. I was looking. I was like, okay, that's easy to make. So I made my own, and I tested it out here. And true enough, yeah, you can catch barracuda, kingfish with them, and all sorts of. I mean, I've caught grouper as well on those fish, and even the fish that we're normally fishing for back then, which is like spankled emperors and stuff. I've caught on treble hooks, treble assist hooks. Now, I wouldn't particularly use them for regularly. Obviously, you're dealing with 3 points that could, snag 3 times more. As far as barracuda is concerned, uh, yeah, okay, barracuda you could catch with one hook, just a matter of putting wire. So and plus, guess what? I don't enjoy fishing for barracuda. So but it is a thing, and you can still buy them from Decoy. They're actually good for use when you're jigging for ribbon fish, and it's a thing in Japan. Touch Duo, they jig for them. Okay, even prestigious brands like Beat have a line of jigs for Tachigo because they're actually fun to catch. I mean, I've actually missed fishing for them, but we don't fish for them around here, although there's quite a few of them. It's just that we don't go on night jigging trips. But yeah, I mean, hopefully one day, if the group has that kind of consensus, we could fish for them at night, and it's fun. I used to catch them as a bycatch when we were jigging for tuna a long time ago. This was like 2010 or something, and we were already fishing for tuna at night with jigs. And we were even using Thai rubber for tuna back then. This was 2010. And we were also catching them on, what do you call this? What did I use? I used Tenya soft plastics. The fast jigs, and Thai rubber at that time. That was kind of fun. Alrighty, so that is it for this video. Hopefully you've learned something. It's chock full of, I think, 25 plus tips. So that's that. If you have questions, drop them in the comment section, of course, and share this video if you think that it's useful for your friends to learn, family, friends, fishing buddy, all that. It's very important to like this video because of the algorithm. Like YouTube is weird, so yeah, just click on the like button. Very, very important. And two ways to support the channel is that we have a limited edition cap that you can find under this video. Ships from the US. So for the US guys, it's actually domestic shipping and it's not that expensive. I chose to actually make it as cheap as possible, um, so that when you wear it, okay, it's both a souvenir, that's A, and B, so that when people see, see the logo, they ask, hey, what's that stuff, and then they can find this channel. And of course, memberships help a lot. Uh, and if you want to support the channel so that we can move forward, there we go. Okay, click on that membership button. And before I go, I'd like to thank all our members. Thank you very much for sharing this journey with me. And that is that. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Alrighty, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class is missed.